Yeah, it's a comedy. And then the villain always says, "Push the button, Max."
What year was it produced?
60s.
Yeah, I haven't seen it. So when I was in prison,
it's great.
when I was in prison, when I first got there, right, you're going down to the rec area, and on the wall there's 20 computers, and they're in little cubicles, like, but we're talking like
at the library.
Yes, like little desk cubicles. Like you know, you've only got 3.5 feet of space, and then there's the wall, but you're sitting at the, it's all wide open.
Right.
So it's just a bank of 20 guys sitting there, staring at a little. It's probably a 12, 13, 14-inch computer monitor. And you could go to the cage, which was literally a cage. You could talk to the guy in there and you'd be like, I want to watch this DVD. And they'd put it in and you could sit there in front of everybody looking over your shoulder and plug your headphones in and you could watch a movie. So I figured out you had to like set appointments for this. So it was usually completely full of chomos and sex offenders and stuff like that. Because, I don't know, the rec worker was one. And so he kept, anyways. But it was first come, first serve on weekend mornings. Okay. So that became my thing because I was waking up early to watch the
Saturday morning cartoons.
Exactly. I watched all of the James Bonds in order. Okay. I watched all of the Mission Impossibles in order. I watched all of the Fast and Furiouses in order in sequence.
Oh my God.
I watched all of Lord of the Rings in order in sequence. I watched basically anything that
you better stop. You're kind of making it sound like a good thing. like
a good thing. Oh my gosh.
I had so much time.
The humor now of like, oh, he's in prison, he's got cable TV. It's like, yeah, it's either that or he bashes his teeth in on the drinking fountain. It's like, dude, there's no amount of comfort you can give a prisoner that compensates for being in prison.
I know. But I was just like, man, you're kind of making it sound like, man, I could do some catching up.
Okay, put that in the backdrop of I watched it sitting in front of a bunch of people on a plastic chair, so it's not like I was in a TV room recliner. Okay.
Well, I was thinking like if you got a movie on that was semi-popular, you might have a crowd.
Well, that would sometimes happen, and then it would lead to fights, and it was a whole thing. You had to do the walk by glance, but there was a lot of traffic behind you.
So I was thinking, man, you got to pick out some bad movies so nobody wants to watch them.
Dude, it was prison, and so there was no, everything was screened. Okay, so every movie in there had no,
it was all produced by Angel.
No, they had like 3,000 movies that you could get access to. There was quite a few movies. They had a catalog. There's like a company that basically vets movies for prison and then distributes, provides them to the prison, these DVDs. But I mean, basically it was like no violence, no sexual stuff, violence. no problem there. These guys have seen the real thing. They're like, that's fake blood.
The first movie I ever watched, Conan the Barbarian, on VHS.
Wow. No, it was good times. All right, so President Trump has a new passion, which I don't know. Sometimes I wonder if we should be concerned about this stuff.
What our administration is working to deliver. I didn't realize I was going to make this such a big factor in the I didn't really campaign. I campaigned on crime, but I never thought we'd go into every city and take a really safe city that we've all been living with for years and make them safe. And now it's like a passion for me, and it's a passion for the people behind me. So I didn't get elected. I did get elected for crime, but I didn't get elected for what we're doing. This is many, many steps above. And I want to thank Stephen Miller, who's right back in the audience right there.
So we're taking safe cities and making them safe.
Safer.
It's a passion of mine now. I'm assuming he meant unsafe cities that we've been living with for years. But here's the funny thing. So then he goes in here to Stephen Miller.
His hair looks a little tousled. I wonder if he's just been light on sleep.
I think that's just the mob.
Okay.
But either way, he goes off on Stephen Miller. I thought this was really reassuring to me because every now and then you wonder if a cabinet member kind of gets out on a limb, and they say a thing or two. And then one morning we wake up and there was a 3 a.m. You're fired, Rex Tillerson. You're an idiot. Right?
You're reptilian.
Yeah. You just never know. Yeah. You're reptilian. So you just never know. But apparently Donald Trump really likes Stephen Miller.
To have him, I love watching him on television. I'd love to have him come up and explain his true feelings, but maybe not his truest feelings. That might be going a little bit too far. But Stephen, thank you for doing an unbelievable job. And the people of this country love you, I tell you, and they love what you say about crime and stopping crime. So now I'd like to ask you.
Yeah. If Stephen Miller had his way, I'm pretty sure he would just do inquisitive inquisitions. We're going to find out who are the criminals. All right. So we've already said good morning to Pony Boy. Good morning, John Atakis. Berazier, it is a good morning. Madam Mim, good morning. Sweetie, good morning. Carlitz, good morning. And, of course, Ron, Peasant's Perspective, good morning to you as well. Okay. In other news, Donald Trump has authorized covert action from the CIA in Venezuela. Mm-hmm. Why did I think this was already going on? What does the CIA do?
Well, we were shooting boats with missiles or whatever.
Yeah, we're knocking out narco terrorists, and you just thought, let's loop the CIA in. All right. Based on my understanding of election engineering, the CIA already has an outpost down there. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know what this means, but by the report, basically, Nicolas Maduro, the current position of the United States administration is he's an illegitimate president based on the last election, which was bad. Did you know anything what happened at the last election?
Not really.
Oh, basically.
I mean, I did know that a bunch of the opposition members
are like running for their lives, including this woman who just won the Nobel Peace Prize. Yeah. So basically, they stole the election outright. It was like huge margins, 60-70% victory. They had the vote tallies. They had everything. But the machine showed that Maduro won in a 1% vote. And then they just said, we don't need to count the rest of these votes. And Maduro's like, I'm in charge. So it was a complete overthrow. The United States and the whole world kind of looked at it and was like, and this became there was a lot of scandals packed into this. Not only is it clearly like something very bad happened.
I think I was getting Maduro and Bukele mixed up.
No,
I think I was in my head.
Yeah, no, very different people. Very different people. No, not the same. Okay, not the same. Bitcoin fan, Trende Agua, not the same. Okay. So, anyways, Donald Trump's got basically to authorize the CIA to go down there, and it has to do with their elections. So, intensifies the pressure campaign against Venezuela and its authoritarian leader, Nicolas Maduro. The Trump administration has been targeting alleged drug smuggling boats coming from the country using deadly military force to stop them from coming to the United States. So, I don't know. That'll be fun. I guess we'll see how that goes. Anytime I see Venezuela in the headlines, you've got to take into account potential election stuff. It's all part of it. This is John Solomon. So we didn't break the story. We broke the story. We passed on the story. We're just peasants, right? Yeah. That's all this is a peasant's perspective on what's happening out there. So John Solomon broke this story about this 30,000 lines of phone data that the Congress subpoenaed. So this is really interesting. The J6 committee subpoenaed the phone companies for these records of anybody who came basically in and out of January 6th, right? Anybody that came in and out. And then they were mapping those phone calls. And
I think it was more like 30 million lines.
30 million lines, excuse me. Whatever I said, it was way too small. Yeah. 30 million lines. Now, this went to Congress. It did not go to the FBI. I kind of misunderstood this story here. It went to Congress, and then what happened was Congress was trying to smuggle it into the FBI and just give it to them, Adam Kinzinger specifically, right? Because then the FBI could take it and use it because they could not obtain that information through normal legal means. And what this is a massive scandal because this is the list that everybody wants to avoid being on.
President Trump, but I just want to remind people, I don't talk about my case on the show. I've filed for cert to the Supreme Court, and one of the aspects I've argued all the way through is that this was not a construction. The Constructionist Committee was unlike anything they'd ever done in the history of the House. You didn't have a ranking member, and you didn't have minority counsel. And the reason that's important is that you get all this is why the thing. We didn't get any of the witness tests. You couldn't cross-examine. You didn't get any the testimony beforehand. But if you had that, John, it'd have been impossible to do what they did because the minority counsel would have blocked it. They would have said that's impossible. Right. So this is the problem with having
certainly would have
Nancy
exposed
Pelosi
it in
run it.
time.
And by the way, and Cheney.
So what Steve Bannon's explaining here, because this J6 committee is the one who made the criminal referral on him that led to him spending 4 months in Danbury Low Penitentiary prison. is that they didn't have, it wasn't properly constituted. You didn't have minority counsel, opposition counsel. You didn't have true Republicans that were appointed by the Republicans on the committee. And so when they decided to subpoena just a blanket subpoena for all the phone records, nobody was there to go, I don't think you should do that. There was no stopping it, right? All the checks and balances that we just assume are supposed to happen in the legislature aren't happening because of party politics. One party abandoned the committee to just let it happen. Meanwhile, I promise you, if you were communicating with me in that time frame, you're on that list of 30 million lines of code. You're part of their heat map. You're part of their target list. You're part of their list of people that they got to make sure don't support the terrorists, right? Pretty scary.
He's out of Congress. Kissinger's out of. They're all out. They're all exposed. They don't have the debate clause right now to protect them. Am I correct on that?
That's really important. Let me just walk you through a quick timeline. So the committee gets up and running in 2022. They go out and get this massive dragnet of phone records, 30 million. You don't need 30 million phone calls to figure out what was going on January 6th. What were they doing? They were mapping the MAGA movement with every piece of data they could. It was basically creating an enemies list. That's what the J6 committee was doing in this project. And think about the scope and scale of what they've now done. 30 million lines of phone records trying to figure out everybody who talked to the Trump White House. 92 groups, including Charlie Kirk's TPUSA and everybody else in the conservative movement. 8 members of Congress in the Senate, 1 member of the Congress in the House. They were mapping an enemies list. This was an investigation purportedly to solve what happened at the Capitol that instead was trying to figure out who are the movers and shakers in the MAGA movement that we can stop in 2024. Now, that plot gets stopped by the American people in December 2022 because Americans choose Republicans. Republicans come in. The Democrats get thrown out of the House. A year later, when Adam Kinzinger is no longer a member of the committee, he's no longer a member of the House. He no longer has protection of the speech and debate clause. He's calling up the FBI and trying to give them these records, which, by the way, the FBI would never have been able to get this large a swath of records. It's just too broad a request, right? It wouldn't be a legitimate investigative need for that many records. He's trying to say, hey, I don't know, but let's just get them to you guys. He's making that call in December of 2023, 4 years after most of the cases have already been brought in January 6th. Why is he doing that? He's not doing it for some legislative purpose. He's not doing it for some criminal purpose because J6 is mostly solved by that point. He's doing it to try to give the FBI one more piece of weaponry to stop Donald Trump from winning the presidency in 24. That's what is so concerning. It's a civil liberties violation that then gets politically weaponized by offering it to the FBI.
John Solomon, your story's up on Just the News.
Adam Kinzinger took that information to the FBI years later. Your information, you, the listeners of the show, good chance you're associated with somebody who went to January 6th, right? They were mapping out the entire MAGA movement. That's scary. Who are the movers and shakers so they can stop them before 2024? Huh, interesting. That's kind of funny. What happened to us after all this? Could we have made a difference? Possibly. I don't know.
We'll go to get the show, podcast, all your information. This is exploding even as
we got more coming. We got an interview today with Kash Patel. Yeah, we got an interview with Kash Patel today. We're going to ask him about this. It'll be on at 6 o'clock. I'm lucky enough every day to follow you on Real America's Voice, Just the News, No Noise, 6 o'clock, and then Jay Solomon Reports on all social media platforms.
And if you missed those stories, you can always catch us at 6:30 a.m. the next morning. Okay, so that's like, Ron, that's like the biggest story. Shouldn't we just like stop and talk about that endlessly for the next 10 years while we, try to break down how the government violated potentially millions of people's civil liberties?
Sure. Unfortunately, the rest of the world does keep moving on.
Yeah, exactly. And it feels like a drop in the bucket in the bigger narrative that all has to be resolved, right? If we just take the premise that we're watching WWE, nobody's involved. We're all peasants. We're just, growing our carrots, potatoes, and going to work in our trade job. Okay. So we're not really, we're just watching this thing. You have no involvement. You never showed up at a political rally, right? You're just tuning in. So what are all the things that kind of need to be resolved so that we can have the belief through the evidence that we see with our eyes that our country believes in justice, that our country believes in fairness? Where do we need to start?
Well, first thing would be fair and honest elections.
Fair and honest elections. Okay. Yeah. Getting rid of weaponization of government. Yeah. Okay. Maybe gerrymandering. I mean, they could go on and on.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
here's Steve Bannon and Tucker Carlson kind of surmising their own list. Where do we got to start? How do we actually get to a point to where we can start debating tax rates and social safety nets and, you know, the pros and cons to such? Instead, we're over here arguing about mechanisms and levers to power and a bunch of nonsense of like, you know, is it good to live or not? You know, we're still debating whether we should go to foreign war and kill Haji when he's adult or if we should just hurry up and kill him in the womb, right? But either way, we're talking about killing. Like, we're not even talking about what you and I would consider civics and politics. We're talking about like moral issues with smokescreen issues constantly being brought.
Yeah, I was trying to decide whether I wanted to cut my junk off or not.
Yeah, exactly. You've got yes, exactly. Who's advocating for this stuff? The government. Who are the constituents? You know what I mean? I remember I ate like a barbecue thing, and some conversation came up about, you know, something happened in the local schools district. I was like, well, who's voting for that? And everybody's looking around. Well, I didn't vote for that. I didn't vote for that. I didn't vote for that. And I'm like, it must have been people on the other street.
Yeah, I mean,
You know what I
but
mean?
we got to leave room for some of the weirdos out there.
There's a few weirdos, but you start to kind of wonder, is like, are they really the majority? Like, how did they get 50% plus one for the blue-haired lady? You know, it's like very confusing. So there's a lot of narratives that need to be cleaned up. So Steve Bannon and Tucker Carlson are talking about some of those. And these are ones that we've talked about a lot.
Can you give a couple examples of what you think DOJ should be doing right now?
Well, first off, I think DOJ, we got attorneys. I think we got to go back to the beginning. You have to go back to the election. You have to go back to January 6th. Look at Nancy Pelosi. There's a young reporter, Allison Steinberg, over at Lindell TV. She asked Nancy Pelosi a question today about January 6th and about the National Guard, and Nancy Pelosi turned around, screamed at her from a few feet away, "Shut up. How can you ask that?" They're so sensitive about January.
Oh, that was funny. We didn't play that clip, but she turned around, "Shut up." It's like no one's ever seen
Sounds
Nancy.
like we need to play that one.
Yeah, no one's ever seen Nancy do that.
So you got to go back to the stolen election of 2020. You've got to go back to January 6th. You have to take the whole continuum. You have to go back to the whole thing on Crossfire Hurricane. You have to adjudicate everything they did, and we have to do it in public. Even throwing the pandemic in there and the response, the summer of love, all of it. If to keep this republic and keep it as a constitutional republic, we have to be fair about this. We have to be transparent about it. We have to adjudicate it by the rule of law, but it has to be done. And you see, we're making some progress. You got Comey with a couple of charges on appetizer, John Bolton, maybe with a couple, Letitia James, but it's not good enough and it's not fast enough. And the only way we're going to solve this is U.S. attorneys. I think we're 25 or 30 short is what I'm hearing. There's just some sort of backlog. And you can't depend on a Halligan coming out of nowhere and being able to drop a couple right away. We have to take apart the deep state. We have to do it now in every aspect that's happened over the last couple of years. You know, at Charlie's, I know you were at the Student Action Summit down at Tampa. And normally, you know me, I'm running out there, we're at war, and I'm dropping the mic and running around like a madman. I told Charlie before, I said, this is going to be very different. I said, I'm going to go out with, I call the Tampa Resolves. And it is, we have to prioritize everything else we're working on. It has to be to go after the deep state. That combination of national security, intelligence, law enforcement, the Pentagon, its interconnections with Wall Street and big tech, that we have to do that. If we don't go after that and do it now with a sense of urgency, we're never going to have another shot. This is the time we have to do it. We have to make it a priority. And I said, you're going to find out something in this. The third resolve I said was, no, do it now, do it with urgency. And the third was, who's ever not with us is against us. This is the best way we can unmask everybody, because this is not going to be pleasant. It's not going to be easy. You and I are called, you're called more names than I am, but we're both, by the Tel Aviv Levin crowd, we're called everything, right? They're going to do more of that because the deep state is also connected with certain of our allies. You have to go do this, and you have to do it. It's not going to be pleasant.
Certain of our
You're going to
allies.
get thrown out of your country club, maybe. But if you're going to save the republic, we have to do this now. And a part of that, you're going to see if you do that, the escalating political violence of the more and more radical left, and quite frankly, more and more of the central apparatus of the Democratic Party is going to be gutted. And that's why I think, President Trump, I know, wants to focus. Todd Blanche talked about it today in the Oval Office. It has to happen. And it's only going to happen, I think, if people like you and myself and some others keep saying, hey, guys, I understand you got 1,000 things you're working on, but we have to start to rank order priorities, and this has to be the priority right now for President Trump.
Yeah, there's no doubt in my mind that the deep state knows that Trump he's all in, right? He's every angle of attack, firing people, redoing this, moving that, blah, blah, blah. So they're like, okay, if we can cause some resistance,
And it's out in the open.
and if we can cause him to put his focus over here on can I or can I not fire Lisa Cook? Do I have to do this or not do that? Let's get the, then the deep state's like, let's just run the clock.
Just keep him busy.
Right, keep him busy. 5 years from January 6th, statute of limitations runs up. Okay, who cares if we find out Antifa was involved after 5 years? Can't do anything about it unless you can connect it to a grander conspiracy, which is what these guys are saying, because some of these statute of limitations have run up on certain things. And it's like, how is there ever going to be, this isn't done. We're still in the dominoes are still falling from Crossfire Hurricane, and you could go back to Libya, and you could go back, I don't know, to that fateful day in Dallas when JFK was shot. You know what I mean? Like, how far back? It feels like the same cabal, always kind of doing the same thing.
We could at least get back to that moment in time when Wesley Clark talked about toppling the nations.
Yeah. The 7, is that what you're talking
Yes.
about? Yeah, you could go back to that. So when's the original sin? So this is the clip that was being talked about on Lindell TV, which is driving the Democrats nuts, because now that Trump's in office and Lindell TV gets access to the White House press room and stuff like that, it's like, making a dent. So this was her asking about January 6th and why Nancy Pelosi didn't send the military.
Congresswoman Pelosi, are you at all concerned that the new January 6th committee will find you liable for that day? Are you at all concerned about the new January 6th committee finding you liable for that day? Why did you refuse the National Guard on January 6th?
Shut up. I did not refuse the National Guard. The president didn't send it. Why are you coming here with Republican talking points as if you're a serious journalist?
The American people want to know. We still have questions. Thank you. Congresswoman Pelosi.
Pray the Rosary Daily. That clip is great. That smile, that clip and her smile after Nancy yelled at her to shut up is becoming a meme. That was pretty good. Chemtrails are back in Texas. I hope it's not tariff money they're using. I like that she calls him Tel Aviv Levin. Yeah. It's really funny. Okay, so that's the clip that was being referenced, and she was pretty feisty. Shut up. So in the private chat, when we get to the end, we're going to be going over the Supreme Court yesterday, talking about the voter rights. So if you haven't already become a premium Rumble listener, you need to do that, because we're going to play some pretty hot clips over there. I didn't know if you know this, but Ketanji Brown Jackson doesn't think very highly of her own, what I'm saying. So the Democrats are in serious trouble. Harry Enton just broke it down for the Democrats.
Pace that they were setting back.
Their polling numbers, the redistricting efforts, they're in some serious trouble. So consider this like we've already presented it. You've got this overriding narrative. You've got these two sides that are fighting for power, the Republicans and Democrats. The last 20, 30 years, the Republicans and Democrats have kind of been the Harlem Globetrotters and the Washington Generals. So Democrats push the envelope. Republicans come in and, we're going to be conservatives, and they just don't advance things while they wait for the rest of the world to catch up, and then the next Democrat pushes in. So the Democrats have really been drawing the show, with the Republicans just there to kind of slow things down when they need to let the economy catch up, or whatever the case is. Trump comes in, he's rearranging the whole thing. Right? I mean, he's like, nope, no more foreign students, no more border, no more open immigration. I mean, it's just like completely changing the game plan. Republicans and Democrats are frustrated, but there's still the two sides to all these issues. So whether you see it as a clean red-blue split or uniparty versus MAGA, it doesn't really matter. But the Democrats, right, whoever is opposed to Trump, okay, the Democrats are in a lot of trouble. The actual mechanics of how you win elections and the actual capacity to fund those elections, all of the shady ways that they've been using have been slowly being dismantled and challenged. The Voter Rights Act, which we're going to talk about in Rumble Premium. Right, that's dismantling their ability to get those extra 3 or 4 seats for black representation.
I was just thinking of a visual to help understand this, and I was thinking about the Titanic sinking, and Donald Trump is doing his best to try to save the Titanic, while the Democrats want to argue with him about where the deck chairs are.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, exactly.
Keep him busy while we make sure this thing sinks.
Yeah. Okay, so Henry Enton's going over this. In any situation, if you back a predator into a corner, it's going to bring its claws out, right? That's what's happening to the Democrat Party. That's what Steve Bannon was saying, is the violence and things are going to escalate. There was one of the pollsters from, I think, People's Pundit was on Bannon yesterday, and he was like, we've never done polling on political violence in America. You guys should be terrified. 52% of America think political violence is acceptable if they disagree with your speech. This is not coming and going. This isn't just being done by leaders. There's an actual belief amongst at least half of the country that political violence is acceptable. Half of the country responded, Charlie Kirk deserved what he got, kind of thing. Okay. So
maybe Tipper Gore was right.
This is dramatic. So if you think your side is losing power and you're an actual power broker, you're going to encourage the people that you don't care about, the peasants that follow you, right, to maybe do some things. I just want to keep this in your mind.
2018, right? Because that's sort of the baseline. That was, of course, the first Trump term. That was where Democrats were sort of keeping pace. You go back to April, look at the generic congressional ballot. What you see? You see +3 Democrats in 2025 in April. You see +3 Democrats back in April of 2017. Now jump over to this side of the screen. What happens? Well, the Democrats are no longer keeping pace with the pace that they were setting back in 2017, 2018. You look back in 2017, you saw that the Democrats had leaped up to an 8-point advantage. I remember covering this. I remember a lot of folks, including myself, saying, you know what? Republicans look pretty decent right now in terms of the fact that they had the House, they had the Senate, they had the presidency, but things were likely going to flip. And I was looking for the same signs this year. The bottom line is it hasn't happened, Kate Ball. When it hasn't happened, Democrats have stayed basically steady. They have fallen off the pace. Democrats were way out ahead back in 2017 on the generic congressional ballot. And now we're basically looking at Democrats ahead. But again, they are so far in back of the pace that they set back there. And so I think what a lot of folks are seeing, folks like myself, are saying, wait a minute, given what we might be seeing in redistricting, is this +3 going to be enough, Kate Baldwin?
Well, that's what I was going to ask. One change from that cycle is also this mid-decade redistricting effort that we've been covering so much. You add that in, and what do you get?
Okay, so we add that, and we take a look at the national picture, but then we, of course, taking a look at the state legislators, right? They are potentially changing things, and there are two things that are going on here. First off, net mid-decade redistricting gains. If both sides max out at this point, there are more Republican gains possible than Democratic gains. Yes, the Democrats might try to counter a Texas and a California, but you go along in the different states, and basically Democrats run out of room where Republicans are able to gain and gain and gain. If both sides max out, we're probably looking at a GOP gain of +7 House seats. That doesn't even take into account the potential gutting of the VRA that is right now going to be in front of the Supreme Court. If you add that in, you could be looking.
The Voting Rights Act.
What? Yes, exactly right. The Voting Rights Act. If you add that in, then you could be looking about adding 10, 12, 15, 17 on top of this 7 seats. So I think a lot of folks like myself are looking at this. We're seeing, hey, wait a minute. Those national polls are Democrats are not gaining the way that we expected.
Okay, so they're in some serious trouble here, right? The mechanics of how you can win election is slipping away from them. The money, the ability to use state-sponsored stuff, nonprofit benefits, homeless benefits to gen up voters and gen up activity at rallies and things like that, being limited, okay? Your ability to steal elections on the margins, 2-3%.
The ability to cover that up
is getting less and less. Okay. So all these things are working against them. Mark Elias, we don't have this clip, but Mark Elias is in an absolute panic about this Voter Rights Act that the Supreme Court seems totally poised to overturn right now. And because you've got a handful of seats that are only in existence because there's black voters. Right. And so the black voter needs a Democrat because that's assumption, I guess. And so they've gerrymandered these districts where they have white people voting for black candidates for the black voters. But the black voters, it's a mess. They're going to probably get rid of it. And that's going to change a lot. That's like, don't even know the full impact of that. But let me tell you this, it's not going to be in favor of, the current power structure. Okay. Like at all. So that's a big deal. And all of this is all the stuff that Steve Bannon had mentioned about going all the way back. Trump is still hot to trot on this. I mean, he's still trying to look for those votes in Fulton County, Georgia.
Okay. I won it very big the last time, and I won it big the first time, and I won it big the second time, but we had criminals that didn't allow. I mean, I hope they're going to go into that. I hope they go into the votes which are being stored in Fulton County and take a real look at those votes, okay? Because I won it the second time, too. twice.
Yeah, they're not back. Trump is not backing off on that. He's like, I'm still trying to get Raffensperger to provide some votes in Fulton County, Georgia. You know what I mean? Hey, we've got quite a few listeners joining us on X and a couple on YouTube. If you're going to join us for the whole show, please consider jumping over to Rumble and watching on the Rumble platform. We love Rumble. They've supported us in free speech all the way through and provide a great opportunity for us to be a part of their creator program. So if you're joining us for the whole show, consider jumping over to Rumble. Okay, Patrick Byrne was on with Emerald Robinson, and he's talking about how Dominion just sold out to this new voting company, Liberty, right? We got Dominion and now Liberty. We'll see. There's a leaked audio where they're talking about dismantling some of the machines that have CCP stuff on them. According to these people that have been chasing these machines for years, there's nothing you can do. There's absolutely nothing you can do to these machines to make them secure, right? So is this like out with the old boss, new boss, the same as the old kind of thing? We don't really know exactly what's going on. Truly, we don't know what's going on. There are people who think that what's happening down in Venezuela, because Venezuela is tied into these machines and elections, we've covered that before, right? There's a consideration that a lot of that is because of this. Like,
regardless of ownership or whatever, I still don't trust them.
Nobody trusts them, right? So this is Patrick Byrne and Emerald talking about this new deal with Dominion. The other thing, too, is publicly Dominion is saying we've settled all of our lawsuits, but they haven't. Mike Lindell's like, nope, I haven't settled anything for me, haven't heard from me. Patrick Byrne here right at the beginning. Haven't settled anything with me. So there's a lot of misrepresenting and misreporting, which makes me think we're getting scammed. Mm-hmm. Right? That's what it makes me think.
Have you settled with Dominion? Have you settled with Dominion? I said, have you settled with Dominion?
You really have to ask me that, Emerald?
I don't.
I'm the guy who wouldn't settle with Goldman and all these schmucks and took them for $35 million. No, I haven't settled. Now, my lawyer has asked me not to talk about Liberty because I don't know bupkis about Liberty. I don't know anything. I don't need new lawsuits, but I can talk about Dominion. And I think their technology it's bad to the bone. There's no way somebody can buy it and fix it in 10 months. There's absolutely no way. It's designed to be bad. The whole architecture is designed to be porous. Dominion is my target. And no, I have not dealt with them.
And we don't necessarily have to talk about Liberty Vote to kind of explain or extrapolate what's going on here. We just have to look at the history of the voting machine companies, and we can actually pull that flow chart back up that shows some of the acquisitions and how these past companies are reconnected. And when you look at how they've acquired one another, merged with one another, change names, you see that there is a storied history of these election voting machines. So you can see from this is how it's been done for decades. So when we hear that Dominion is being sold to whoever, it doesn't matter who it is, we look back at the history and say, okay, what's really going on here?
Ricard Monti, perhaps. This is what organized crime does on Wall Street, where I happen to be close to today. Organized crime has this long history. They take companies, when the DOJ and the SEC get too close, they fight all they can. And when they get too close, they just crack the company and shove it into another that they are really behind as well. And they just play this shell game for decades with the DOJ and SEC. They did this all through the 90s. If you've ever seen that movie, Wolf of Wall Street, go look what those companies, but they buy old dying companies that have premier names that people will recognize. And then they do a bunch of mischief in them. And then when they get caught, they sell themselves out to another company with an old name, but that they fell on hard times. They just play these shell games for decades. So this could well be the same technique evolving in the election technology industry. That'd be my first guess.
I wonder, because the president has been so outspoken.
So basically, all the bad stuff. Yeah, keep going after Dominion. Oh, totally criminal liable. Meanwhile, the new machines, new boss.
Right.
And then they, we'll do this for 5 or 6 years, and then the DOJ will finally get those subpoenas.
Sparkle and shine.
We couldn't do it either. We sell off to so-and-so, right?
About his criticisms related to voting machines in general. We have been anticipating some kind of executive action related perhaps to moving away from voting machines, Patrick, and going in the direction of hand-counted paper ballots. And I want to be sure that I use that phrase, hand-counted paper ballots, because you can use paper ballots and then you can tabulate them in a machine, right? I have to wonder how his administration is feeling about this sell of Dominion. And And is it being sanctioned by someone in the Trump administration?
Whoever, I feel like Marlon Brando in Godfather 1, whoever brings you the deal is the traitor, Michael. Whoever brings you the meat is whoever brought this deal to Trump is the traitor. But the last thing Trump should do, Trump is about to walk into a 2x4.
He's about to walk into a 2x4, right? If they allow the quote, oh, he's a Republican, so he should own the voting company and he can control it. And oh, they'll swing elections for Republicans. No, they'll swing them for the Uniparty. You'll be filled with a bunch of Trey Gowdys and Adam Kinzingers all around you, right? You cannot trust anything but the people. Mm-hmm. Isn't that what we've heard? So Rasmussen Reports has been reporting on the Dominion sale quite a bit. And they say this, and this is their projected timeline. Based on the below report, DOJ arrived at Dominion with bad news. So this is a report that they've been teasing out. This is a report that has the whistleblower from Venezuela, and it kind of documents these machines. And if you're on X, you should be following Rasmussen Reports. It's a great follow. They're it's the polling company. This is them. So this is what they said based on them reading the tea leaves, which these are the same tea leaves we get to read. So on one end, you have Patrick Byrne, that's just kind of a no-machine absolutist. There's nothing you're going to do with this infrastructure, these contracts, Dominion, the technology. Nothing you're going to do is going to be redemptive. It's all going to be just, out with the old boss, new boss is same as the old, that kind of thing. But Rasmussen has a different belief. Based on the below report, DOJ arrived at Dominion with bad news. Encouraged to sell quietly, certain assets were sold in September. Liabilities and any criminal charges stay with the sellers. Asset buyer already decommissioning CCP-infected machines. That might be the poison pill right there. The thing that we think they're doing, and now we're okay. Listen to the audio here. There's a clip of that. Crooked states seethe, but contracts require EAC certification, which is impossible with CCP-infected machines. U.S. military initiates covert kinetic activity in Venezuela. Okay, we know that. DNI Gabbard publishes report showing CCP inside the machines. Wish you did that. The story of the machines who ran them and for how long triggers enormous public outcry. The usual useless politicals claim no prior knowledge and fumigate on Fox News. The Justice Department brings criminal charges against a wide range of co-conspirators, including key public officials. Whistleblowers from around the world are already here in the U.S. witness protection and are available to make court appearances as needed. 60% of votes who distrust machines climbs to 94%. 2026 election utilized paper ballots as primary evidence of vote. That's their timeline. That's their projection. I would love that. Paper ballots by 2026. I'm all in.
I'm in.
My concern is we're going to have, some Operation Warp Speed thing where Donald Trump's out there taking the vaccine on us. And it's like, how could you possibly endorse machines after all you put me through will be my response, Kay. At this point, it's on you what you're going through, but you put me through hell because of those voting machines. I want him to toe the line and have no more voting machines. So big story.
Ooh, that was a close one.
Oh my gosh, thank goodness I had a lid. I'd have had mess all over my hands. Okay, so this is AOC. And this next couple clips, these are kind of fun, okay? Remember.
I'm ready.
These are your betters. These are the people. Now, this company she's going to name here is a bookkeeping accounting firm, okay? So just FYI, there's two companies she names. The one you don't recognize is a bookkeeping firm.
Rivers in rural areas were on fire because of corporations poisoning the people who lived in those areas. Ooh. Poor middle-class communities getting poisoned and dumped on by corporations like Deloitte and 3M, pouring chemicals into these places. And they want to call it a Democratic priority.
Deloitte's like, all we have is people's tax return files. What are you talking about dumping chemicals in the river? We have a paper shredder business. We have a paper shredder. We don't dump chemicals. So Democrats, what do you expect from these people? Then you've got Kamala Harris. Tell me if you agree with this, because she takes herself pretty serious.
That is a decent resume. But go ahead. Well, some people have actually said I was the most qualified candidate ever to run for president.
Oh, agree.
I like the some people say. Very nice, but go ahead. Speaking fact. Yeah.
Okay. All right. What? She's the most qualified person to ever run for president. All right. We're in a world where your resume and what chair you sat in for 2 minutes matters more than what you did while you were in that chair. Like, I don't know that there's a whole lot of black men in California that are like, oh, we loved it when she was attorney general locking us up for marijuana. Well, she herself was smoking it. We loved it.
Can we get her on Between Two Ferns?
I love how the reporters, like, I like how you did some people say, because that's Trump's thing, right? Some people say, but it's like, I don't know, man. Like, some people say you're the best candidate ever. Oh my goodness. Here's another one. Now, keep in mind, JD Vance, he's a Marine. He's got probably that sheepdog instinct just a little bit. But according to Jennifer Welch here, he does not have that, because there's no way that he could support this mass immigration roundup, because guess what?
He is married to a woman of Indian descent.
Yes.
He has mixed race children.
Does.
So to all of the MAGA voters out there, if this man will not defend his wife and will not defend his kids, do you think he gives a crap about you or anything to do with you?
What?
He is married.
Kamala Harris is the most qualified vice president ever to run. JD Vance, he wants illegal, deportation for all brown-skinned people, including his wife and kids. Can you believe this, man? These people are your betters. Thank you for tuning in to the Peasant's Perspective, because we have a realistic view of the world.
I wonder if
we have to live here.
I wonder if JD Vance finished the wall in his house.
It went right through the master bedroom in the middle. He's like, Usha, you're on that side of the wall.
Get over there.
These people are absolutely insane. Now, as you know, Tom Holman has been accused of taking $50,000. There's a video.
Oh, yeah.
It's not a video. It's an audio recording. Where's the audio recording? Well, listen, that's just run the story. Okay? Just allege that there's an audio.
We'll play it as soon as you release all the JFK files.
Yeah, exactly. So this feels, the more we get into this with Tom Holman, it feels like, Ron, when was the last time you beat your wife? What are you talking about? You know what I mean? It's like, I can't even dignify a response. So Bill O'Reilly puts Tom Holman on point and says, did you take the money? And then Tom Holman goes on to explain what's probably really happening here.
I know George Stephanopoulos is one of your best friends. Mm-hmm. He convicted you on television, okay, of a $50,000 bribe. Stephanopoulos did this on ABC. The vice president, J.D. Vance, defended you. And I thought he did so pretty well, because due process is important. Do you want to clarify anything about that situation?
I didn't take $50,000 from anybody.
Okay. How did that get into the mainstream, do you think?
I have no idea. Look, there's been hit pieces on me since I came back to this administration. There's got to be 30, 40 hit pieces on me about how I'm involved with contracting or government contracts, when in fact, day one I came back, I recused myself from any discussions on any contract or any monetary decisions like that, because I used to have a company that did consulting. So I cleared myself day one. What people don't talk about is I took a significant, huge pay cut to come back and serve my nation. And I'm not enriching myself doing this job.
Does this make you angry that they're coming at you this way?
I don't care what people think about me, and never have. No, because I know who I am. I work for the greatest president in the history of this nation, in my opinion, and we're doing the right thing every day.
Okay. I know George Stephanopoulos is one of your best friends.
$50,000. They shorted us like $8. It was $49,992. I'd take $50,000 nobody from nobody. I don't know. I'm just kidding about that. But either way, it's another one of those smear tactics. Marjorie Taylor Greene said it best. What was the example she used? She used some example of another one of these, huge public crimes, and she's like, and George Santos is sitting in prison over 50 grand. It's like, oh, Tom Holman took $50,000 cash. Yeah, well, you opened the border to the cartels and they brought in billions of dollars of drugs. What do you expect from me? Tom Holman's willing to go punch those guys in the face. He's our bad dude. You know what I mean? My gang's bigger than your gang, and I want him running a division of it. Anyways, it's interesting here. Now, Jack Smith came after Donald Trump based on this Espionage Act and on the documents, and he had a little sit down with Andrew Weissman. Do you know Andrew Weissman was Mueller's deputy, and he's in this Mark Elias, Norm Eisen revolving door in and out of the DOJ and these law firms and stuff like that. So he had to sit down with Jack Smith talking about how Jack Smith had come after Donald Trump, and CNN ran a little piece about exactly how it is they were trying to create that hook to be able to create the illusion of a legal reason to be committing lawfare on Donald Trump.
2 months after the United States entered World War I in 1917, Congress passed a law called the Espionage Act. It aimed to crack down on wartime activities that were deemed dangerous or disloyal to the United States. It prohibited and criminalized obtaining information, pictures, or copying descriptions of anything related to national defense with intent or reason to believe that that information might be used to harm the United States or to aid its adversaries. The Espionage Act has been amended a few more times since then until its latest revision in 1950. The Espionage Act, as it stands today, is meant to nab spies and leakers who've shared U.S. secrets, particularly defense secrets, that put America at risk. There was Reality Winner, the former Air Force linguist and NSA intelligence contractor who leaked a classified report on Russia's interference in the 2016 election. Under Trump in 2018, Winner was sentenced to more than 5 years in prison for a single count of transmitting national security information. There are some violations of the Espionage Act that are considered more serious than a leak or a whistleblower. Perhaps the most serious or the most notorious espionage case was that of Julius and Ethel Rosenberg, a couple from New York who were executed in the electric chair under the Espionage Act for a conspiracy to share nuclear intelligence secrets with the Soviet Union back in 1953. Notably, the prosecutor who advocated for their execution was Roy Cohn, who went on to become a mentor to the young Donald J. Trump, which brings us to the latest American to face charges in violation of the Espionage Act, the former president, Donald J. Trump. The charges against Trump fall under Section 793 of the Espionage Act, which prohibits the gathering, transmitting, or losing of defense information and is punishable by up to 10 years in prison. According to the indictment, the documents found in Donald Trump's storage rooms, a ballroom, and a bathroom included information on American nuclear programs, potential vulnerabilities of the United States and its allies to military attack, and plans for possible retaliation in response to a foreign attack. Donald Trump is not a whistleblower or a journalist or a foreign agent. He didn't leak a military report to the press for the betterment of the nation, nor did he hand out anti-war flyers. He is the former president of the United States, accused of stowing away boxes and boxes of some of the most sensitive U.S. national security secrets.
And your point?
And he showed him to nobody.
And he showed him to nobody, and he was the president. It's like these two key facts. Now, okay, so here is the teased out interview between Jack Smith and Andrew Weissman. Now, I know that this clip, it's 3 minutes long. It's not like incredible. We've played much longer, but you need to understand here. This is one of those instances where putting yourself into a vacuum, showing up in this auditorium and listening to this, there's two very rational, well-reasoned people having a discussion. And if you didn't know the context, right? Okay, Espionage Act. Well, nobody likes a spy. Well, unintentionally or intentionally holding classified documents. Okay, I mean, we've conceded the premise that Donald Trump couldn't have these documents in the first place, right? Like he's the one guy, like, Clinton and the classified stuff in the sock drawer. Like, well, he was the president, so he can do whatever he wants with the classified stuff.
Right. If the president can't have these documents, who can? Who can?
Exactly. Well, archives. It's like, okay, well, if I declassified them by bringing them out of the White House.
Who gave those guys permission to hold on to the stuff?
So
the president.
There's a very serious constitutional consideration that most consider to have been adjudicated vis-a-vis Clinton's sock drawer, okay? But either way, listen to the rationale. And this is one of those instances where you might agree with the words that they're saying. But again, just like his own things, the facts would lead you to different conclusions. And he leaves out one critical fact in the entire discussion. In his entire modus operandi, he was the president. Everyone else you're talking about wasn't the president.
You and Rob Hur came to very different conclusions. How is that fair?
Because they weren't the same. Okay, different conclusions. Rob Hur and Jack Smith came to different conclusions. But it wasn't the same. It wasn't different in the fact that the evidence was different. Classified docs, It's different in the fact that Joe Biden could not be compared to Donald Trump. President and vice president are two very different things.
All have been treated the same.
Or in Joe Biden's case, he was a senator.
How do you justify the case in Florida when it's the same criminal case was not brought with respect to either a Democrat or a Republican.
Yeah, so I think this is actually a great example to talk about the rule of law and enforcing the law equally. And just as a sort of background, that case, the Biden case you're talking about, I didn't have any role investigating that. Another prosecutor, another career prosecutor, a guy by the name of Robert Hur, who had actually been the U.S. attorney in Maryland under the first Trump administration, took on that matter. And he, like I, issued a report in his case about his findings. And he found in his case that it was not warranted to go forward in that case. And the difference, and this is what matters, is both cases involve classified documents. And one was in Mar-a-Lago, which was a social club, and also his home. And the other one was largely in Biden's home, also, I think, an office that he worked at. The difference is the facts. The rule of law allows for different outcomes when the facts are different. One of the major differences between the two cases is the obstructive conduct in the case that I investigated. And that's important for a couple of different reasons. One reason is to prove illegal possession of classified documents. You need to show that you possess the documents, or the defendant possessed the documents willfully. And that means he knew what he was doing was wrong, and he knew he was possessing the documents. In my particular case, we had tons of evidence of willfulness. We had, and the obstructive evidence, publicly saying these are my documents or things like that, and I can keep them. The evidence to not give the documents back when the government even tried to get them back before there was a criminal investigation. Those sort of things. And then after the investigation started, still refusing to give them back and then trying to obstruct the investigation. That helps prove willfulness. That sort of evidence didn't exist in the other case. And there are, I could probably keep you all here for a long time talking about the differences in terms of, the numbers are not, I want to make sure I get this pretty close to right, but almost 4 times as many documents that the person I was investigating compared to the other case. The sensitivity of the documents. I think Special Counsel Hur said that the documents that he most likely could bring a prosecution on were over 15 years old and dealt exclusively with the conflict that had ended in Afghanistan. As we alleged in our indictment, the documents I was dealing with were much more sensitive and much more recent, and we laid out the sort of...
They were like, Obama and possibly committing treason and trying to say Trump was a Russian asset and evidence to the contrary. Way more sensitive.
areas, those sensitive subject areas in the indictment. So there were a number of differences between the case, and that is what the rule of law wants, is to have situations where different factual outcomes, different levels of proof can result in different outcomes. And that's what I think happened here.
Okay, so without knowing any details of what he did or his case, I can generally agree with you. Yeah, different facts, different outcomes, right? So if Donald Trump did not, in fact, commit certain crimes, then he would be found innocent. I mean, if someone else like Letitia James did, in fact, commit a little crime, then she would be found innocent or guilty and or innocent, right? You shouldn't really squabble about the size or the comparison or, well, what you did was really big or what I did was really small. Look, the law's the law. Like, jaywalking or speeding, it's still a traffic ticket. You know what I'm saying? So get over it. Now, MSNBC, they always want to have their cake and eat it too, right? No one is above the law, big or small. Oh my gosh, Trump, you're being so petty. Let the small stuff go, right? They can't decide what they want.
James, they have an indictment against her for a supposed fraud where she allegedly benefited $18,000. She prosecuted and won a civil fraud case against Donald Trump for $500 million. $18,000 does not rise to the level of being a federal fraud case, in my experience. Those are cases you would decline. Again, even assuming the facts were true.
Eric Siebert didn't think so either, the Republican U.S. attorney in the Eastern District of Virginia.
Who was appointed by Donald Trump. And not just Eric Siebert, Pam Bondi and Todd Blanche, the attorney general and her deputy, thought they could not secure a conviction. According to Glenn's reporting, they communicated to the White House that they could not secure a conviction here. In a normal time, that would be the end of the matter. Hey, the attorney general has spoken. It's her Department of Justice. That's it. You brought in Lindsay Halligan insurance lawyer who's overriding the attorney general and not even informing her of the timing of the indictment. That is like the biggest FU you can imagine. There's a hierarchy. I worked at the Southern District of New York.
I love
which was
how on one hand, these different offices need to operate it totally independently, and they shouldn't really be notifying the attorney general of routine law enforcement activity. I mean, mortgage fraud is just mortgage fraud, right? Like, of course, some rogue prosecutor can bring charges against Donald Trump if he broke the law, right? You don't have to inform him. Oh my gosh, can you believe they didn't inform him of this thing? We didn't even have a chance to intercept those messages and give James Comey a heads up. You know what I mean? Like, what are you saying here? Read between the lines, folks. These guys want to have their cake and eat it too all the time.
The sovereign district, and we liked our independence, but when the attorney general said you don't have a case, you didn't bring the case. I can't think of a circumstance where a U.S. attorney would buck the attorney general, and here she's powerless.
You can't.
Them going into all these cities talking about rebellion. Look at your own Department of Justice. This is rebellion. You have people going rogue. You've got like Ed Martin in his trench coat looking outside of Letitia James's house. You've got Bill Pulte, who's not a lawyer but plays one on X. And these are the people in Donald Trump's ear, right? They are the ones he's listening to about whether or not to bring cases. It is madness. They are not listening to the attorney general. They are listening to Donald Trump. He has said himself he is the chief law enforcement officer. It is his department now. And they've sent in the clowns, not Team Normal. This is Team Crazy now, who are running these cases that just there's no there there. Do you remember
when Bill Barr went and
they
met
have
with
an indictment
Fani
against
Willis, who had hired her lover, who'd never prosecuted a felony ever, to be the lead prosecutor, and paid him almost $500,000. And they went to Barbados together and Napa Valley. Do you remember this? Right?
But
of course not, because we're just peasants, right? We can't keep track of these elites and their comings and goings and their nepotistic, job dealing for their boyfriends, girlfriends, and significant others. It's a mess. Now, you have to see this from Donald Trump's perspective. Donald Trump lived through this. As someone myself who sat in a courtroom on trial, right, watching his entire life be ripped away from him, I understand the pressure. I lived through it. I went through it. So when Donald Trump says this is not a game. When you started this and they started throwing subpoenas out and dragging kids into grand juries, which, by the way, are perjury traps, right? Oh, hey, you lied to the grand jury. What did we lie about? We can't tell you, but you lied. We have evidence that something else is true, and you said the opposite. Is it a matter of perspective? No, but we'll figure it out in court. Let's roll 5 years. You know what I mean? Oh, don't worry. If you told the truth, you'll win on appeal. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's ridiculous. So you have to see this from Donald Trump's point of view. If he did something wrong, lock him up. But if all you don't like is his political perspective and the fact that he challenges your power, then we have a problem.
I want to put my son in jail for something that they made up. So they know they made it up. And they say he will serve the rest of his life in prison. These are sick, bad people. And don't tell me about us going after them. If anything, we've been very, very soft. I wouldn't be that soft. I'll tell you that. Thank you very much, everybody.
Whoa.
The FBI came into one of my friend's house over here in the Seattle area for misdemeanor charges. Flashbangs, woke them up, dragged their daughter out of bed undressed, had a male FBI agent sit there and stare at her while she changed her clothes, and handcuffed his children and his wife. Okay, for walking in the Capitol. No felony charges, no violence alleged, just walking in. They did that. You're lucky, James Comey, that you got to go in the back door to be arraigned. No one else gets that luxury, buddy. You did that to real people. What makes Comey or Clapper or Brennan or Lisa Monaco or Merrick Garland or any of these people any different than me? What nobility do they possess beyond what I contained within? Nothing. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. You don't get it both ways. Donald Trump is going soft. You're going to pay for your real crimes. That's it. Nothing more. We're not going to ask for 1 pound extra of than the flesh that you took. Right? That's why, Letitia James, you're going to go to prison for $18,000. That's why. Because you trumped up a $500,000 fraud. Because you said Trump's estate at Mar-a-Lago is worth $18 million and not the $1 billion it's likely worth, right? That is why you will go to prison. And that is why different court cases with different facts have different outcomes. That is why.
Yeah.
Yeah, Trump is not happy about it. Kash Patel did have that interview with John Solomon, and he confirmed we got more coming. They're looking at leaders for public corruption.
Last question. All the things that you've seen, all the weaponization you've uncovered since you came in and found these secret files or restricted files, all those things, beyond those who are already charged, do you think you've seen other crimes that might eventually get referred to justice?
Yes, we are looking at so many different leads on criminal activity by those who are in positions of power. And we're not going to stop until every single one of those is fully exposed. The documents are provided either to Congress or the courts of law, and make every referral we can to the Department of Justice. These indictments that you've seen and the ones that you're going to see coming up here in this near future are just the beginning. But I have to remind the audience one thing. Everybody's like, it's 7 months. What have you guys been doing?
Yeah.
Well, they spent 20 years building this disease temple of corruption. It takes a little bit of time to defeat it and beat it down. And I'm not asking you to trust me. I'm asking you to look at the work the men and women of the FBI have done so far in these 7-8 months and just imagine what we're going to do come the year end.
The FBI looks a lot more like the one I covered 20, 30 years ago than the one I had to endure and cover the last 10 years. And that's a great credit to you, Director. There's no doubt about it. The president said it today. We know it's true. Last question.
All right.
All
So
the
there's more
things that
coming.
you've seen, all the weapons.
I'm excited.
I'm still waiting.
I'm still waiting. But, you do have to concede the fact they spent 20 years building this temple of corruption.
Oh, absolutely.
Now Ted Cruz is in on the action. He wants to, try to limit the Soros influence and the Soros money. Now, Ted Cruz has fought against the Soros money in Texas in his Senate campaigns. He knows money comes from Texas. And so he is saying that they've got to stop the funding. And he's got a bill to do that.
We'll say one of the most important things President Trump has done recently is he has pledged that he's going to go after Antifa. And what I've been urging is follow the money, cut off the money. And you look at this No Kings rally, and there's considerable evidence that George Soros and his network is behind funding these rallies, which may well be riots all across the country. And Soros is writing the check. And so I've introduced legislation called the Stop Funders Act that would add rioting to the list of predicate offenses for RICO. Why is that? Because it would let the Department of Justice use RICO, racketeering, to prosecute the money that is funding the anti-Semitic protests on campuses, the pro-open border protest in LA and other cities, and these No King protests. Anyone that is supporting rioting and violence, it lets you go after the money. And I'll tell you, there are more than 200 left-wing groups behind these No Kings rallies this weekend. They deliberately are blind to what each of the others are doing. That's part of how they avoid accountability. RICO is designed for precisely that sort of criminal enterprise. And so I believe the Senate, we ought to take up and vote on and pass our Stop Funders legislation. And I've urged both Pam Bondi at DOJ and Kash Patel at FBI, follow the money and prosecute those who are writing checks funding acts of violence, political violence or otherwise, across the country.
Well, let's give them more power.
Right.
More power to create networks. And, maybe we could get a list of 30 million phone numbers from Antifa. Use the things that they did. I hate this so much, man. I hate this so much. This is what happens when you let cancer metastasize.
Yeah.
Right. This is what happens when you let Epstein come to the White House 20 times in the 90s. We still got to talk about it 30 years later. Right. This is a big deal. On the financial front, there's an interesting thing that came out. John Burns Research and Consulting, they posted this little chart here. It says FHA loans to immigrants without permanent residency, including H-1B visa holders. So what this is it's a percent of FHA loan locks. So these are people who applied for loans that got rate locks that presumably would have closed these loans. So all along throughout kind of, recent history, the percent of people who are not residents and are basically here on H-1B visas, right, that were applying for home loans that got FHA loans, it was about under 0.5%, one and a half.
1.5, 2.
Okay, something happened. I can't remember what happened in 2020. What happened right at the beginning of 2021? I can't remember. What was it that happened? Oh yeah. The Biden got into office. Biden came in 2021 and just, immediately, like February 2021, over 2% for the first time ever. And we
steadily
just peaked
climb.
until by May of 2025, May of 2025, which is this year, okay?
Yep.
Up over 6% of FHA loans were going to what amount to be illegal immigrants.
Woof.
Okay. 6%. 6%.
And that's at those rates.
Now,
that were
and it's
available.
also the vast majority of homes that are financed through FHA. Which think about if you are adding a 4%, this is 5%. You were under 2%, right? You're up to 6. So you're adding 4 to 5% base purchasers. Is there any wonder why home prices have skyrocketed? And is there any wonder why you can't buy a 3-bedroom, 2-bath? It's because Jose has got his girlfriend, his brother, and his 2 girlfriends and their kids living in the house, right? And they can afford that house, and they're willing to pay a little bit more to max out their FHA lending or whatever the case is. They changed the rules. Look at this. Boop, right back down to under 0.5%.
Whoa.
What's that going to do to the housing market when you just took away 4% of buyers? So you drove up the price by adding a 4% base, and now you've just, in 1 month, taken them away. Ron, snip, snap, snip, snap. Do you have any idea the toll that changing these policies so quickly is taking on the American consumer? Okay. Is this going to just, reduce prices by 5% at the house?
I don't know, but I didn't know you could just fix it like that.
Apparently, you could just say border be closed and they'll close it. Right? Some of our big problems can just be fixed by, they're exploiting a loophole. Let's just close it.
Yeah.
Okay,
Fixed.
well, that's really happy and all, but now I'm actually have a little bit of concern about what's going to happen to housing.
Me too. Honestly.
We have to be concerned, okay? I mean, this is reality. We're peasants. We have to live here. Right?
I'm concerned about the whole economy. This is just one segment that I am also concerned about.
Yeah. Well, we've got way too much farmland going to the soybean farmers, apparently. You know what I'm saying? Like, what are we doing here, folks? All right. So Donald Trump also has another take on things that's important to consider. He's talking here about the Supreme Court and this tariff decision. This might be one of the most important decisions the Supreme Court will take in this century, honestly and truly. This is kind of the difference on, do we have a country and can we pull this thing through as what we call Americans and in our current status, or are we just going to be bled out by corporatism and international NGOs and
Rome 2.0?
There is nothing stopping the liquidation of America if they don't allow Trump to use tariffs the way he was doing it. They're put in for this very reason. It's designed to be able to compete with non-market economies like China or the king, who has a total monopoly on the gold mine or whatever it is, right? That's what it's here for. Potentially one of the most important decisions ever. You can side with Donald Trump on everything, but if you can't side with this, that border wall is temporary. If you can't side with Trump on tariffs, then you may as well just get a foreign bank account, because your bank is foreign now. You know what I mean? Like you are owned by others. Private equity, money coming from the Middle East, money coming from Asia, manipulated currencies are going to come in and buy up everything. Look at what private equity is doing to, for example, the veterinary business. You can't hardly be a privately owned veterinarian. You almost have to have, private equity. And who owns the private equity? The freaking Chinese. You know what I mean? So this is a big deal.
Vanguard, BlackRock.
Yeah, Donald Trump's like, hey, he might be sitting in the audience for this decision.
Are not allowed to use what other people use against us. There's no defense. It'll be a disaster for America. That's why I think I'm going to go to the Supreme Court to watch it. I've not done that, and I had some pretty big cases. I think it's one of the most important cases ever brought, because we will be defenseless against the world. Okay. Are not allowed to
Sometimes I wonder if Donald Trump is projecting how serious something is, like he's challenging Roberts to decide against him. I don't know if it works or doesn't work, but he's dead right. Like, this is very serious. Along with other things being very serious, I mentioned earlier how the People's Pundit has been doing polling, and they've been finding that people are much more comfortable with political violence than you and I probably assume. I think there's an idea that it's like a really, it's the fringe far right and the fringe far left kind of believe that. But on the left, the polling is showing otherwise. On the left, it's not uncommon for people that you think are totally rational people to be like, Charlie Kirk had it coming, right? And I know this because I can't tell you how many people expressed about me in January 6th. He had it coming and got everything he deserved. And I've kind of heard everything. And I've
heard all that.
You have no idea what happened to me, right? So JD Vance addresses this. He's like, listen, Charlie Kirk understood this, and we've got to come in and root this out. Here's the problem. You can go after some bad actors. You can go after the people funding these protests that are kind of driving fuel to this idea. However, once the idea is planted, that's like what Elon Musk refers to as the mind virus, right? Once you accept political violence as acceptable, then it becomes acceptable in all of its forms. I remember back when I was in prison, there was another inmate who I love dearly, who in a very private setting, he and I were talking about what it's really going to take to fix things, right? What's it really going to take? And this was on the heels of a very long discussion about politics and power, and Trump having to be a little bit like Julius Caesar and come in and just take the levers of power and just kind of impose himself, and a lot of stuff like that. And when we walked into his cell, he goes, if I can tell you the truth, I don't think any of this is going to get fixed without violence. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what's needed. And I had to stop him. And I was like, you can't think that way. Right? You cannot think that way. You have to take the Gandhi approach. There are two nations that freed themselves from the clutches of the British Empire. There was the United States, who did it through blood, and there was India, who did it through refusal to consent, to refuse to buy the tea anymore, to buy the goods of England, to where pretty soon there was no value to India. It was more expensive to maintain whatever they were doing in India than it was to pull back and just have normalized commercial relations. Does that make sense? Because India wanted their sovereignty, and they recognized economic sovereignty, right, is what would secure their national sovereignty. So here's Donald Trump doing the same thing. We have to peel off from the influences of the UN, the World Economic Forum, the European Union, whatever China's got conglomerating with communist dictators around the world, right? We have to be able to separate ourselves. Tariffs are that economic decision. This is what prevents us from having to solve our problems with violence and blood, and allows us to use the carrots and sticks that the economy provides us. So Donald Trump understands the nature of this. JD Vance, you have to acknowledge the problem. On the other end, if you think that violence is the way to do this, then you don't recognize the importance of the tariffs. Do you see what I'm saying? Stand up for something early before you have to draw your gun. Stand up for tariffs so you don't have to later defend your land with, when the Chinese come to foreclose on all those mortgage notes they hold, right? Defend your land by blood.
You have to acknowledge the problem before you can actually solve it. And right now, you have a number of people who actually think words are violence. And if words are violence, then one reasonable response to people saying things you don't like is to kill them. And we have to just completely reject that in the United States of America. It's one of the reasons why I wanted to get out there to Ole Miss to go and do this, because I think that engagement really matters. And it's not most people, right? This is the good news. It's not most people who think that Charlie, meaning most people on the left who think that Charlie deserved to die because they said something that they had disagreed with or that they even found offensive. But it is a large enough and powerful enough minority. It's pretty well funded. There's a lot of resources behind it. There are a lot of powerful media voices behind it. And it is, I think, the most significant domestic problem we have in the United States of America is this justification of violence, which then, of course, leads to the real thing. You have to acknowledge the problem before. I never justified, quote unquote, violence on January 6th. And to the extent you could call my actions violent, I repent. I didn't intend that. And I made a mistake if you construe it as violence, right? We have to be really cautious of this. This is how you get people that have bad ideas that do very bad things. When I thought we were debating over tax rates, I didn't realize how we were using tax rates as a club for control. You know what I'm saying? Like, we have to be cautious of this kind of stuff for sure. I didn't mention this earlier, but I'm just going to show it for information now. We've kind of moved on, but U.S. home price history, 1890 to 2025. Ron, do you think we might be in a bubble? I don't know. I mean, I'm just saying, folks, cautious waters ahead. We have no idea what's going on with this little trippy thing right here. Okay. No idea. I don't know. Okay. I lived through 2008 and I was involved in the real estate crisis. Did my first real estate transactions very beginning of the year in 2008. By the end of 2008, we were paying to make houses go away. So, things can that whoop, whoop. Yep, I remember I learned how to do real estate while the market was flowing down the toilet. Okay, Stephen Moore posts this. It's a clip with this press conference that
excuse me. No, this is Fox Business, and I can't remember this guy's name, but he's talking about rare earth minerals. We have an interesting situation in the United States because we need rare earth minerals to exist and operate in our modern industrial economy. But at the same time, we've kind of completely given away the farm to China. And that is the cause of this latest round of tension with China, is over rare earth minerals, which is odd because you'd think we'd lead the world in it since we have more rare earth minerals than anyone else.
New York, sitting right next to me, no less. The man is Stephen Moore. There he is, right next to me. Both sides are playing hardball, China and the United States. And the market doesn't care. The market's gone straight
remarkable,
up. What's going on here?
Yeah, the two biggest trading countries in the world. I want to go back to this mining issue because I'm very frustrated by this. We have a new study at Unleash Prosperity that by one of the top geologists in the country, who is now going to be running the U.S. Geological Survey, which does has oversight of all the mining. We have more of these minerals than any other country in the world. So this has been an error that we've imposed on ourselves. And we have to, as Interior Secretary Doug Burgum is saying, we have to mine, baby, mine, just like we drill, baby, drill. And I liken this situation, Stuart, to what happened in the 70s and 80s when OPEC had the cartel that controlled the oil market. We have handed this cartel over to China with respect to these minerals. Why did we do that? Why did we do that? We should be mining for the resources. We have more than they do.
They didn't, okay? The global crowd, the global warming crowd, the environmentalists, they don't like mining. Right. Period.
But you know what? You know who has the worst mining standards? China does. We have the same thing with the drilling. We have the best environmental standards, and the Middle Easterners.
The power we gave to the Greens was extraordinary.
Exactly. It is,
and it's got to be unraveled.
Once upon a time, the United States was the mineral capital of the world. We were the #1 country in mining, and now we're not mining for anything. The 15 major minerals that we need for production, for everything from national defense to technology to manufacturing. China and Russia now dominate those markets. It's crazy.
So how do we reverse that? Mine. But you can't reverse that in the short term.
It's going to take a while. It's going to take a while to get our mining, but we got to get started tomorrow. But the other point is Trump is using the trade tariff threat to get China to, right now they're essentially embargoing these critical minerals that we need for our microchips and so on. So it's an ugly situation. We put ourselves in this situation, but Trump is going to use the tariff threat, I think, to get China to open up those markets.
Well, it's the only leverage we've got.
Yeah.
I mean, he can't wave a magic wand and suddenly produce these rare earths here immediately. You can't do that.
It's going to take.
You've got to bridge that 2 years before we can get this stuff.
I'm just saying.
Okay, so when I was in prison, we have. I don't have like a bunch of banks and stuff like that, but we have an old E-Trade account that I got when I was in college, and I bought my first stock ever. It was Countrywide stock back when it was like at the bottom. I thought, dude, you got to buy the dip, right? Days before they went bankrupt. And then I turned around and I took my small, what was left over of my investment. And I was like, well, I'm going to buy some Hollywood Video stock. Which, by the way, it was called Movie Gallery. It was Blockbuster and Hollywood Video. It was one company. I bought some Movie Gallery stock days before Blockbuster went bankrupt. So I was like, man, this buying the dip thing, I clearly do not understand the impact of Redbox and Netflix. Okay? So
tell me about the third one, because I need to hear the trifecta.
Okay, so the third time, I thought third time's a charm.
Shut up.
So a couple years ago, my wife and I threw some money at a precious metals company called Niobe Corp. Okay, Niobe Corp mines niobium, and I have a strong belief that niobium is going to be a
niobium.
Yeah, niobium.
I've never even heard of it.
Exactly. So listen, I got to show this to you. So we bought the dip. Okay, we bought niobium back here. Woo. We bought it back when it was down under $1 for a moment. Okay.
Wow.
And they did a stock split. So at one point when I'm in prison, my wife's going through. I mean, she's selling everything, Ron. It was like a fire sale at my house. I came back to my house and I was like, hey, where's this? Sold it. Where's that? Sold it. Where's this? Sold it. For how much? $5. I paid $90 for it. I'm like, you can't imagine the small things that my wife had to sell just to pay the cell phone 1 month. You know what I mean? And so many people helped in and helped out. And by the way, life still hasn't fully recovered from all of that. So don't think for 1 minute I'm not begging for dollars every day, right? But either way, point is in here, she looked at this account, and I can't remember what we originally put in. It was $1,000 or something like that. And it just sat there and sat there and sat there. Totally forgot about it because that's what you're supposed to do, right? Anyway, she looks at it and the thing's like, it was negative $800 from what we'd originally invested. And it was so little money that by the time she paid the broker's fees and whatever, it was like, she just left it, right? And sold some other stuff. Well, she opened up this account the other day and it had thousands of dollars in it. We're like, what? Look at this. So this is the stock. I'm showing it on the screen. So back in the day when they thought they could get some mineral rights, they used to trade up here and then they dropped down. Like I said, we bought it somewhere in this time frame. Might have even been over here. But either way, look at what it's done in the last, a couple months. I mean, it's been parabolic. And this has to do with, clearly has to do with the change in policy with mining. So anyways.
Huh. Do you want to start a mining company?
Oh, I'd love it to.
Where should we start?
Wisconsin.
Okay.
Yeah, let's do limestone.
So they got rare earth minerals up there?
They got limestone. We can dig out a cave in the limestone and just sell the limestone to something. And we could make like little blocks and sell it to artisans or something like that.
No, dude. If I'm going to dig a hole, I want to get rich.
You're not digging in limestone is what you're saying, huh?
No.
Okay, so this is Scott Bessent and his trusty deputy secretary guy talking about China. China is a non-market economy. This rare earth mineral thing, you got to compete. It's buffering. We'll do a little refresh here.
I'm still holding AMC.
You're still holding AMC stock?
Others suggested.
Yeah. I actually never sold my movie gallery or my Countrywide. So I converted over. I think my Countrywide converted over to Bank of America. So I seriously have like 3 shares. Like I get every now and then I'll get like, you have voting rights. I'm like, it doesn't even show in that account. I have it in another account. Who knows? I'll never log in. Like, I don't care. Gone, my head.
Others have suggested that the United States has violated a non-existent agreement with the Chinese regarding export controls or the implementation of measures. This is a false narrative deployed to justify these broad and unacceptable Chinese actions. There is, in fact, a published agreement between the United States and China from earlier this year that the U.S. and China would suspend tariffs of over 100% on each other. China further agreed to effectively suspend elements of its rare earths export control regime by expeditiously approving licenses for U.S. companies seeking rare earths. Both countries agreed to this pause on tariffs and rare earth measures for 90 days while we pursued further negotiations, which have gone on quite successfully for the past 6 months. And there is a published agreement about this on official U.S. government and Chinese websites. This is the Geneva Agreement. It's not a secret. It's out there. It's published. We keep our tariffs low. They keep the rare earths flowing. We have not imposed our reciprocal tariffs on the Chinese since that time, but now the Chinese have expanded their rare earth controls. We have complied, they have not. And so in this context, this is how China has announced its new and extremely expansive controls on rare earth materials just last week. It's a clear repudiation of everything we've been working toward for the last 6 months, which was a stable tariff situation and a continued flow of rare earths. The short story is that we've had compliance and the Chinese have escalated. And they've taken this opportunity to make a pretextual claim of noncompliance or other measures to justify this. But the United States won't stand for it.
So one of the things Scott Bessent goes on to say, and he said this yesterday, he says, with rare earth minerals, you cannot compete with China in this. They're non-market, right? They don't follow rules of capitalism because it's a command and control economy. And so what China has done is they've identified these rare earths that we have abundance of, and they've decided to, before we can stand up mines, they flood the market with whatever that mineral is cheap. So if I need the mineral in my end production, I'm like, well, I can just buy it right here. It's already available. And it's cheaper than what an American mine could stand up and do the opening costs and stuff like that. And so they undercut. And then for existing minerals, they do this. It
creates a new barrier to entry.
It drives the price down because they don't have to make any profit. Guys are working. They get their pork strips, beans, and rice. And we're shipping out cheap steel, cheap niobium, cheap gold, whatever it is, right? And so what Scott Bessent is, they've identified this as we're not doing that anymore. So what we're doing is we're doing a basement. We're doing a floor ceiling. So here's how it's going to work, China. We're going to charge, let's just pull a number. We're going to charge $100 for an ounce of niobium.
Okay.
If you bring niobium into this country for $100, we're going to buy it. And we're going to hold it in our strategic reserve to use it against you later. when you sold it to us cheap. Because when you run out of supply or whatever the case is, we're going to have all your old stuff and we'll sell it back to you. You know, the same game you guys play. And what that will do, though, is by creating a basement price, that'll allow American manufacturers to stand up, and miners and stuff like to get stood up and have a base price that actually turns a 1% profit and then grow from there.
Well, they need the base price to be high enough so they can justify starting a company that has overhead and expenses that they have to overcome.
That's exactly the point. And so they're going to create a ceiling, a basement, and then they're going to have just like we have an oil reserve, they're going to have a mineral reserve. If the price of oil drops below so much per barrel, the United States buys all the barrels, right? Buy it all. They fill up the reserves. They literally dump it out into the oil sands or whatever they do. Like, it's crazy. Okay, so they buy all the oil when it drops below a certain price. They're going to do the same thing. If it goes below this price, we'll buy up all the market. So that prevents foreign countries from dumping it, because then the U.S. is buying it. It's a short-term profit, but you'll run out, right? Because we're playing long game here. Okay? When you open up a mine, you don't open it up for 2 weeks. You know, you open it up for years and years. So highly recommend you guys go get it on some niobium. Niobium makes magnets, batteries. It's like a critical mineral for stuff. Yeah, you put a little bit of niobium in magnets, like on an alternator with the two. Have you ever seen this? The two alternators running. You tie the belts between. You have one motor, one alternator.
This is like a free energy machine.
Exactly. You add the niobium to the magnets on the alternator, and on the alternator, and so it over generates electricity enough to run the motor that's running the alternator to then charge the batteries. And so it is free energy. You can go on YouTube and watch them, but niobium is the key mineral that adds the stuff. You can also add it into batteries. It increases battery life. So it's one of those things that niobium is what took us to where the electric car was even possible as far as holding a charge in the batteries. So it's very critical mineral. Yeah, I know a little something about it.
The more you know. Bling!
There was no point in buying actual niobium stores like you would buy gold or silver. So I thought, what's the next best thing? How about a mine? And but then they couldn't get permits for years. I thought, well, someday they'll need it. Okay. This is Scott Bessent. We are not going to allow the command and control company to run us.
Lots of levers that we can pull for products that they need. That could be equally damaging. We don't want to damage their economy. We don't believe that they want to damage ours, but they are a command and control economy, and they are going to neither command nor control us. And we're going to assert sovereignty. So are the Western allies. And part of this investment boom that we're seeing is President Trump wanted to reshore, and part of the reshoring is strategic. So we don't want to decouple with China. I don't believe they want to decouple, but this rare earth export control is a sign of decoupling. We have
so we don't want to decouple, but it might be inevitable. We'll see. I think America's finally kind of looking at this right. We got to close things up, get secure, deal with them as long as we have to, but eventually we're going to wean ourselves off. We have to buy the rare earth minerals right now because my niobium buyers aren't digging anything out of the ground yet. Right? That kind of thing. Okay, guys, that's it for us today on the public side. We are going to jump over to private, and we're going to do our Rumble Premium stream for all of you great unoffendables. Yesterday, we had a open and candid discussion in the chats and on the stream, and we have decided to call those that join the peasants in the private on Rumble, you're the unoffendables. We can say anything we want over there, okay? So we are going to jump over, and we are going to be doing a private, or continue this stream in the private for Rumble Premium subscribers, and we're going to be listening to the Supreme Court, some clips out of there about the Voting Rights Act. Really fun and interesting. Don't forget to retweet and share the show. And we got a lot of listeners on X today. We'd love for you guys to hit that repost button. We'd love it. You can even put quote and say, great show. All right, guys, thanks so much. We'll talk to you again tomorrow.